Greetings, my fellow free sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning to LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful realms of planet Earth. Today's date is Thursday, March 12th, 2026. This is episode 1945. Virginia's Treading Gun Rights Bills and late Dr. Walter Williams' Repudiation. Before I proceed, you can follow me on multiple social media sites and podcast channels. Just type in Looky Luck number 3, Looky Luck Roman number 3 with 3 eyes, or the Looky Luck Roman number 3 podcast. Furthermore, if you have any questions, comments, recommendations, and all that good stuff, wherever you do, please use decorum. Hit me via email to ll3.podcast@proton.me if you want to donate. Go to paypal.me or cash.app/Loki Luck number 3. Oh my goodness. What the hell is going on with the world, right? We all know the order, the global order, wants to rule the world in a desperate manner. The bullshit war in Iran. Like I said before, I am not fond of the Mullah regime. According to Genocide Watch, they're going after dissidents. Dissents, and they didn't really care for the Sunni Muslims as well, and many others that question their authority. However, it's I renounce the war itself. A lot of reports. How accurate is the information? Now, people want to point the finger at Donald Trump. We all know he's just another canary in the coal mine. The fall guy, you can say. And all those folks out there want to do the No Kings Rally. No more Kings Rally. But you support your Laconian hack from the other party. And you think, and you believe it's all going to be great, dandy, and be free, right? Well, you folks better be paying attention. It's a lot bigger than what's going on right now. Been hearing reports too that even China, even the CCP may be getting involved of giving the signal on attacking the United States too, all because of fuel, you can say, for their military. Their economy is going to shambles as well. When you have bad economies, they want to have people go to war so they can be distracted and go, do it for our own well-being. Happens multiple times in history, regardless where you live. The world is standing in blood, regardless of territory. Not just in North America, around the world. Tired of the unidimensional Marxonian Institute rhetoric, stagnity, the Jim Jones Jamboree, the Khmer Rouge 2.0, etc. Always got to say who's actually benefiting these wars, conflicts. It's not you and I. You all think it was a bunch of piss ants. A lot bigger than what it is, folks. So hopefully, I always stress this, prepare yourselves the best you can. Be more self-contained. Don't rely on the state. If you're on the government welfare system and on food stamps and you're dilly-dallying, and that shuts down, you're screwed. There's folks out there are capable of working. All I hear is excuses. And I find that absurd, unnatural. And I'm not saying those folks out there may use it temporary, but many others think it's a career. What do you do for a living? Oh, yeah, I get food stamps. Does that turn you on? I get a welfare check. If that all freezes, all shuts down, you're going to have a lot of problems. And I had to let you folks know how I really feel. There's too many people trying to dictate how you should live and all that good stuff. Call out some people, they put you in a bigoted list. It looks like Florida's trying to have their anti-Semitic task force I call it a Jim Crowian agenda. What will constitute anti-Semitism, right? Well, who are Semites? That's not Ginos. We can go on, but it's just another piss poor excuse to let you know you can't criticize us by any means. Feelings are more important than free speech. If you peacefully call these people out, call them the synagogue of Satan, they may call you a bigot, right? I'll wear the badge of honor. And I know they had this funeral services for the late Jesse Jackson. I told people in my past episode how I felt about him. I had reservations, but never wish him any ill will. It's horrible how he suffered. But you have opportunists, too, in the so-called who are considered, quote, Democrats, unquote, just being politicizing. And even Jesse Jackson Jr. was very disturbed. And I can't blame him. I know he made some mistakes as well, like all of us. And I hope and pray he does better himself, which I like to hope. Hopefully that's the case. And well, it's horrible happen. You know, you pay your respects without politicizing. It reminds me of the Michael Jackson funeral too. Even just Jackson spoke out about it, but the whole thing, how thing was run, I was not too thrilled. And I'm not even a Michael Jackson fan, for goodness sakes. It's more political exploitation in the time we mourn and pay homage to the fallen ones. And it looks like Tiffany Mills is trying to run an office board in Atlanta or Fulton County, Georgia. In Atlanta. Maybe she may not be qualified. I go, why the hell you want a con woman that likes to whip people off? And it looks like she even, her and her boyfriend didn't even pay the tab of the rent at the place in Chicago or whatever, or Dolan. It's like, good grief. Oh yeah, well, I galvanize them financially. I'll go down there and do the same thing. Please. The folks down there should just give it a big middle finger, chase her and her boyfriend out of town. And I digress. So, one thing we gotta look out for, folks, they want these wars, we get distracted and get the draft from people from men 18 to 26, the involuntary servitude, I call it. And it'll be a terrible cause. It's their road to technocracy. So always think about that. And so I'm going to be reading a couple articles pertaining to Virginia, and even a past article from the late Dr. Walter Williams. So these two articles came from Reason.com, and it came out yesterday. This one here came from Jacob Solom. Virginia's impending assault weapon ban is logically and constitutionally dubious. And it says here, Virginia is poised to become the 11th state with a ban on assault weapons, an arbitrarily defined category of politically disfavored firearms. Senate Bill 749 makes it illegal to import, sell, or buy many of the country's most popular rifles, including the AR-15. Although it does not apply to firearms possessed prior to July 1st, the bill also prohibits the importation, sale, or purchase of magazines that hold more than 15 rounds, which are likewise highly popular and come standard with many models, rifles, and handguns. The bill is awaiting the signature of Governor Abigail Spanberger, the carpetbagger that was born in the Garden State called New Jersey, a Democrat who has said she favors such legislation. Although the band's supporters portray it as common sense way to reduce mass shooting deaths, that proposition is doubtful given the features it targets, which as usual have little or nothing to do with a gun's suitability for such crimes. And because the prohibited firearms are indisputably in common use for lawful purposes, the ban seems vulnerable to a constitutional challenge under the Supreme Court's Second Amendment precedents. SB 749, assault firearms to include any semi-automatic, center-fired rifle that accepts detachable magazines. It has any of 5 features: a threaded barrel, a flash suppressor, a thumb hole stock or pistol grip, a second hand grip of a protruding grip that can be held by the non-trigger hand, or a folding, telescoping, or collapsible stock. Oh my goodness. As State Senator Saddam Salim, Democrat from Fairfax, which he's originally from Bangladesh, the bill lead sponsor sees it, any of those features transforms a rifle form legitimate product into a intolerable weapon of war. Well, I'm going to say something to you, Mr. Salim. I heard that voice of yours. Oh, well, just do it for the safety. You haven't learned a damn thing what happened to your homeland of Bangladesh. How many massacres does that country had? And I know one thing for sure, folks. I've been reading some of the gun laws there in Bangladesh. If you want to get a handgun, you got to be at least 25 years old. A rifle, 30. Background checks, privilege, not a natural right. So this is how we do it in Bangladesh. Hey, wuss boy, pack your crap and leave. And I'll continue on. The logic here is hard to follow. With or without these features, a rifle fires the same ammunition at the same rate with the same muzzle velocity. Adding a threaded barrel, a flash suppressor, or a folding stock does not make the weapon any deadlier. And while the other features might improve control of the rifle, that advantage does not make much difference in a scenario where a gunman is indiscriminately firing at a group of unarmed people. On its face, the magazine limit makes more sense, since the seconds required to switch magazines might provide an opportunity for victims to escape or disarm the shooter. But the wide availability of magazines already in circulation undermines any potential public safety benefit. Of the 1 billion or so magazines that have been sold in the United States since 1990, according to a 2024 report from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the acronym NSSF, about 3/4 hold more than 10 rounds, while nearly half hold 30 or more. To the extent that the prohibited gun features and large capacity magazines are useful to mass murderers, of course, they are also useful to law-abiding gun owners, meaning nearly everyone who possesses these products. According to the latest NSSF numbers, more than 32 million rifles that will qualify as assault weapons under definitions like Salim's have been sold in the United States since 1990. Those guns are rarely used to commit crimes. In 2023, for example, rifles of all sorts accounted for just 4%. And sorry about that. Woo, I just hit the wrong button here. Good grief. 4% of gun homicides were the type of firearm was specified according to FBI data, while handguns were used in 53% of those cases. Handguns are also the most common type of firearm used in mass shootings, accounting for 54% of the total incidents. Since 1982, U.S. mass shootings committed with handguns include the third deadliest, the 2007 Virginia Tech attack, which Salam cited and explained his motivation for introducing SB 749. Here's the funny thing about it. Virginia Tech was a firearm-free zone. Well, you have to understand, I'm Salim, this day and age. Now get this guy a penile microphone, please. Even if all rifles used to commit murder qualify as assault weapons, which they don't, and even if you add other criminal uses of such guns, we are talking about a tiny percentage of the total stock. These numbers suggest the focus of laws like SB 749 is misguided, even without considering the dubious criteria by which assault weapons are identified. But as a matter of constitutional law, the share of violent crimes involving a given category of firearms is irrelevant. Okay, so which that's true. So it just makes me laugh. These people believe that we're just a bunch of clueless hacks. But I'll continue on. The first two Supreme Court decisions explicitly recognizing that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to arms, District of Columbia versus Heller 2008 and McDonald versus Chicago 2010, which both involve local bans on handguns, by far the category most popular with violent criminals. The court nevertheless held that the Second Amendment guarantees the right to own a handgun, which is described as a quintessential self-defense weapon, and in the 2022 case, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the court added that Americans have a Second Amendment right to carry handguns in public for self-defense, notwithstanding the manifest criminal utility of such weapons. Under Heller, the Second Amendment applies to arms in common use for lawful purposes like defense, a point that Bruin reiterated since the description clearly applies to the guns prohibited by SB 749. It is hard to see how that ban can be reconciled with the constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Philip Van Cleve, president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, said his organization will make an argument in court. We got an attorney. Van Cleve told WVIR, the NBC affiliate in Charlottesville, we've been just game planning since December. There is no way they're going to sustain this at the Supreme Court level. While that remains to be unseen, several federal judges have ruled that similar laws are unconstitutional under the Second Amendment establishes in Bruin, which requires the government to show that gun restrictions are consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. By contrast, several appeal courts, including the First Circuit, Fourth Circuit, and Seventh Circuit, have concluded that assault weapon bans meets the Bruin test. Last year, the Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal of the Fourth Circuit decision upholding Maryland's assault weapons ban. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorish dissented from the rejection of that petition. It is difficult to see how Maryland's categorical prohibition on AR-15s passes muster under Bruin, Thomas says, but always recommend folks in Maryland read your Declaration of Rights. It is an apparent contract. All you gotta do is read, don't complain, take action. There's more of you than those clowns in Annapolis. And I digress. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who has an appeal court judge, dissented from a 2011 D.C. Circuit decision upholding the District of Columbia's assault weapons ban, likewise expressed sympathy for the challenge to Maryland's law, given that millions of Americans own AR-15s and that a significant majority of the states allow possession of those rifles. Petitioners have a strong argument that AR-15s are a common use by law-abiding citizens and therefore are protected by the Second Amendment. Under Heller, he wrote, under this court's precedent, the Fourth Circuit decision is questionable. Kavanaugh, nevertheless, did not join Thomas, Alito, and Gorish. Hope I pronounced his name correctly, in supporting acceptance of this petition, which would have supplied the fourth vote necessary for the Supreme Court to hear the case, although the court today denies certiorari. A denial of certiorari does not mean that the court agrees with the lower court decision or that the issue is not worthy of review, he wrote. The AR-15 issue was recently decided by the First Circuit, is currently being considered by several other courts of appeals. Opinions from the courts of appeals should assist this court's ultimate decision making on the AR-15 issue. Additional petitions for certiorari, okay, hope I pronounced it correctly. If not, let me know, folks. I'll just check it out later. Will likely be before this court shortly. In my view, this court should presumptively will address the AR-15 issue soon in the next term or two. The Trump administration's challenge to the D.C. assault weapon ban give the Supreme Court another chance to weigh in on this issue. When she filed that lawsuit in December, Hermit Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, said she was determined to defend American citizens from unconstitutional restrictions on commonly used firearms. Dillon noted that the D.C. ban, like Senate Bill 749, is based on more than little more than cosmetics, appearance, or the ability to attach accessories. More to the point, it fails to take into account whether the prohibited weapon is in common use today or whether law-abiding citizens may use these weapons for lawful purposes protected by the Second Amendment. She argued that there is no historically innocuous precedent for a broad ban on firearms commonly used by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes such as self-defense inside the home and recognize the right recognized in Heller. That case is pending in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Meanwhile, a local appeals court, ruled last week that D.C.'s 10-round magazine limit is unconstitutional. Magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition are ubiquitous in our country, numbering in the hundreds of millions. The D.C. Court of Appeals said, and they come standard with the most popular firearms sold in America today because these magazines are arms in common and ubiquitous use by law-abiding citizens across this country. We agree that the district's outright ban on them violates the Second Amendment. That conclusion, it contradicted 2024 decision in which the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit upheld the same magazine restriction. The appeals court conceded that the prohibited magazines are in common use for lawful purposes, but that fact, it said, was not enough to make the ban unconstitutional. Apply the Bruin test. The D.C. Circuit perceived a relevantly similar historical analog to the magazine limit restrictions on particularly dangerous weapons such as Bowie knives and pocket pistols because large capacity magazines implicate unprecedented societal concerns and dramatic technological changes. It said the lack of a precise match does not preclude finding at this preliminary juncture and historical tradition innocuous enough to pass constitutional muster. U.S. District Court Judge Peter Sheridan, who ruled against New Jersey's AR-15 ban in 2024, nevertheless agreed that magazine limits pass muster under Bruin. This regulation is in line with the historical regulations. With the tradition of our nation, he wrote, put more precisely, the reduction of capacity is a limitation on firearms ownership. It is not a category ban preventing the law-abiding citizens from exercising their Second Amendment rights with a weapon that is common use for self-defense. By contrast, Sheridan said AR-15 ban amount to total prohibition of a commonly used firearm for self-defense within the home, and under Heller, he said, a categorical ban on a class of weapons commonly used for defense is unlawful. Very interesting there. So you have to always look at these angles, folks. Based on what they're saying here, is considered invalid, which I understand. And always try to look at everything a lot bigger than what it is, of course. So we're going to look at here what Jack Nicastro has to say here. This one came out yesterday. Here are 12 bills Democrats just passed to trample gun rights in Virginia. And this is what it says here. Democrats have introduced 18 bills in Virginia General Assembly to restrict gun rights since January. 12 have already cleared both chambers. 10 are before Governor Abigail Spanberger, and 2 more are awaiting enrollment before heading to her desk. Not one is co-sponsored by a Republican. On the governor's desk, number 1, imposition of civil liability on the firearm industry. Senate Bill 27 allows anyone who has been injured as a result of the firearms industry not imposing reasonable controls on the sale of firearms to sue gun manufacturers. The bill defines reasonable control as procedures that prevent the sale of firearms to people whom the firearm industry has reasonable cause to believe has substantial risk of using firearms to harm themselves or unlawfully harm another. Huh? It's like, that makes a lot of sense. Let's keep on here. Look here, red flag laws expanded. House Bill 901 expands Virginia's red flag laws by permitting immediate family members, intimate partners, including individuals who within the 12 previous 12 months was in a romantic, dating, or sexual relationship with the person, school administrators, and licensed medical professionals, among others, to petition a judge for an emergency substantial risk order to prohibit the person subject thereto from purchasing, possessing, or transporting a firearm for the duration of the order. The issuance of such order is not limited to recent acts of violence directed at others, but evidence of recent ongoing abuse of controlled substances or alcohol. So, just last week, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in U.S. versus Khomeini as to whether federal laws conditioning gun ownership on abstention from unlawful drug use violate the Second Amendment. Let's see what number 3 has to say. Prohibition on plastic firearms. House Bill 40 outlaws the knowing manufacture, transfer, and possession of any plastic firearm and any firearm that is non-detectable as a firearm by X-ray machines. The motivation for this legislation is to crack down on untraceable 3D ghost guns, which were responsible for 2 shootings, only one of which involved any casualties, and 5 deaths in Virginia since 2013. According to data complied by the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund, another totalitarian institution. I'll continue on. Gun buyback program mandated. House Bill 702 requires that each county or city law enforcement agency shall develop policies and procedures to implement either a firearm give-back program or a firearm buyback program by January 1st, 2018. An unintended consequence of this bill is that it incentivizes the fabrication of new cheap firearms for sale to the buyback program, which will come at the expense of Virginia taxpayers. Can we say involuntary servitude? Woo! Oh no, we can't have any commandeering doctrine through the counties and the sheriffs, right? Allegedly. Here, check this out. Firearms prohibited in all public buildings. Senate Bill 272 bans Virginians from carrying any firearms in any building owned or leased by the Commonwealth, such as the University of Virginia and the Virginia Capitol Building, as well as Capitol Square. This is the same square where the Virginia Citizens Defense League gathered nearly 1,000 gun rights activists 1 week after the bill's introduction without incident. We don't trust you, but you can trust us. Leave all your security eggs in the hands of the government in these public buildings. Woo! How astute. Number 6, no firearms allowed in mental health hospitals. Senate Bill 173 forbids the possession of a weapon in hospitals that render mental health or developmental services. This law will apply to 1/3 of more than 150 Virginia inpatient hospitals, including state's 43 private psychiatric hospitals and the 9 behavioral health facilities operated by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. Number 7, firearms prohibited near polling places. HB 909 outlaws carrying firearms within 100 feet of a polling place while the polls are open and ballots are being conducted within 1 hour of opening or closing. The bill also outlaws carrying firearms within 100 feet of any building used as a principal office of the general registrar, an additional registration site, a meeting for the local electoral board, a meeting place for the state board to ascertain the results of an election, or a central absentee precinct. And make no mention of these restrictions are being limited to certain times of the year. Number 8, firearm ownership restricted for certain misdemeanor offenses. Senate Bill 160 expands the federal prohibition on firearms possession by those convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence against a spouse to include intimate partners. Virginia would join 24 other states to have closed the so-called boyfriend loophole, according to the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund. Yay! I want to be like them. Please crap on me. I'll continue on here. I know I'm being a little sarcastic, but this is totally insane, right? Number 9, a young adult may not possess surrendered firearms. Senate Bill 38 requires the subjects of restraining orders to transfer their firearms, which they are prohibited from keeping, to those at least 21 years of age and who do not live with them. These requirements are not as restrictive as California's, which requires subjects of restraining orders to turn their firearms into law enforcement or sell them to licensed gun dealers. Number 10, firearm storage requirements. Senate Bill 348 requires gun owners living with children to store their firearms in a storage device with a combination lock, coded lock, or biometric lock. The bill, as introduced, would have required loaded firearms to be stored in biometric storage devices, specifically, which typically cost over $100. So, we can say about this, don't be surprised that many of these gun owners have these devices anyway, but we gotta make it into a law. All hail to involuntary servitude. We are smarter than you in how to protect your children. I'll continue on here. Soon to be passed, number 11, assault weapons ban, which they did pass. 749 would outlaw the sales of assault firearms, which is the latest version of the bill defines. I already talked about that. So I'm going to keep on going down here. And I'll just go right in this paragraph after the whole Saddam Salim. It says here, some gun rights activists have seized on the fact that Salim immigrated from Bangladesh when he was 10 years old to blame immigrants for Virginia's latest restrictions on gun rights. The accusation ignores the basic fact the bill passed because Democratic votes, not immigrant ones, which is true. Don't get me wrong, but you have to understand, we have to do it for our own good. Remember, they're oath breakers, okay? These people vote for these things, okay? I'm gonna continue on here, and let me see here. The House version of 749 was supported by all 21 Democratic state senators and opposed by 19 Republicans on Monday. But all but 2 of these Democrats, Salim and Kanan Saravasan, born in Chennai, India, are native-born Americans, according to their official biographies. Interesting. So they claim to be native-born Americans. Well, you know what? I'll look at it this way. These folks are not, they're oath breakers. They breached their oath of office by violating the U.S. Constitution and their Commonwealth. I'll continue on. And number 12, the end of open carry. Senate Bill 727, introduced by Senator Michael Jones, Democrat from Richmond, outlaws carrying semi-automatic rifles and pistols whose magazines have a capacity of more than 10 rounds in any place or whatever nature that is open to the public. The most popular pistols for concealed and open carry have magazine capacity in excess of 10 rounds, so this law would effectively require gun owners who wish to open carry to pay several $100s for compliant lower capacity firearms. This is more of a blackmail, a bribe. But continue on. Spanberger has until 11:59 p.m. on April 13th to sign these bills into law, considering she's campaigned on gun control and pledged to sign such bills recently as January 19th. She's likely to make good on her promise. Even if she doesn't sign them, they will go into effect within 30 days of reaching her desk. So as long as she doesn't exercise her veto power. Wow. Okay, well, there's one area, the thing you always got to look at, folks, is, I'm just going to do this right here. These bills, got passed, and stuff she signed, when it comes to your rights, violates the Commonwealth's Bill of Rights, Article 1. And I'll just go right here. Section 1, equality rights of men, which, men means humanity. I could say this too. Section 3, government instituted for common benefit. And we can always go a little bit down here. Will be number 9, I say? No, is it number 9? Yeah, number 9. I consider these to be ex post facto laws. Okay, because It says here that the General Assembly should not pass any bill of attainder or any ex post facto law. And of course, searches and seizures. Okay, that's section 10. Even 11, due process, obligation of contracts. Okay, so right there, section 11, these are impairing contracts. They're illegal, null and void. All right, so section 11 tells you all about. I'm not going to read everything in here because if I did, I'll be here probably over an hour. So I'm going to pass on that. But I'll definitely will put this in here. And here's section 13 about a railroad militia. Was militia standing in the army subordinate to civil power. That a regular militia composed of the body of people trained of firearms is the proper and natural self-defense of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Boom. That's another one, okay? And we can all say right down here, government should be in uniform based on these bills. They're not. And quotes necessary to preserve a free government. Well, based on this, I don't really see that. It's more of progressive totalitarianism. All right. And we'll just hit section 17, construction of the Bill of Rights. The rights enumerated in these Bill of Rights shall not be construed to limit other rights of the people not therein expressed. What's they equivalent to? The 9th Amendment U.S. Constitution. So all these these sections I brought up under the Commonwealth Bill of Rights make those measures illegal, period, done. All right? So that's just my intake on it. I will leave the footnotes on this stuff. I'm going to do an article here that came from the late Dr. Walter Williams. It came out Christmas Eve, and many other articles, including New American. They did it the next day on Christmas. And it says here, the Virginia Second Amendment attack, which came out in 2019, which I find is relevant today. All right. And it says here, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam apologized for his medical school blackface stunt, but he will have much more to apologize for if he signs into law a bill that attacks Virginia citizens' Second Amendment rights. The measure is Senate Bill 16, which would ban assault firearms and certain firearm magazines. Since Democrats have seized control of Virginia's General Assembly, they are likely to push hard for strict gun control laws. Those laws will have zero impact on Virginia's criminals, and a heavy impact on Virginia's law-abiding citizens who own or intend to own semi-automatic weapons for hunting or their protection. As a friend once explained to me, I carry a gun because I can't carry a cop. I'm a proud fellow Virginians of my fellow Virginians' response to the attack on their Second Amendment rights. Firearm owners in the state have enjoyed with sheriffs to form Second Amendment sanctuary counties. That means local authorities will be required to protect Second Amendment rights in the face of any attempt by Virginia's General Assembly to abrogate those rights. 86 counties, over 90% in the Virginia Commonwealth, have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. Spotsylvania County's Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to approve a resolution declaring that county police will not enforce state-level gun laws that violate Second Amendment rights. Sheriff Chad Cubbage said, "Be it known that the Page Sheriff hereby declares Page County, Virginia, as a Second Amendment sanctuary, and that the Page County Sheriff hereby declares its intent to oppose any infringement on the right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms." Culpeper County Sheriff Scott Jenkins made a vow during a Board of Supervisors meetings where the board unanimously agreed to declare the county a Second Amendment constitutional county, to properly screen and deputize thousands of law-abiding citizens to protect their constitutional right to bear arms. In an attempt to appease citizens' resistance, Northam suggests that there will be a ban on only sales of semi-automatic weapons. He will allow gun owners to keep their AR-15s and similar rifles as long as they register them. See, right there, right of privacy and right to incriminate yourself. Otherwise, they must surrender the rifles. I urge Virginians do not fall for the registration trick. Knowing who owns that weapon is the first step to confiscation. Governor Northam further warned, if we have constitutional laws on the books and law enforcement officers are not enforcing those laws in the books, then there are going to be consequences. But I'll cross that bridge if and when we get to it. Also, my bills I signed are constitutional. He tells you how much of an illiterate these clowns are. Not just Northam, but Spanberger, okay? And other goofballs in the Richmond Assembly. And I'll continue on here. Let me see. Some Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill say that local police who do not enforce gun control laws should face prosecution, even threats of the use of the National Guard. And see, if that's called treason, okay? Putting the war against the people of that Commonwealth of Virginia. If Bamberger does it, it's the same thing. If she signs it, it's called treason. The people who voted for that are treasonous as well. And I know, if I'm correct, I think it's like a $10,000 fine minimum. And the maximum is life in prison. So, it go way up there too. So, it's not a game, folks, okay? Virginians must heed the words and capture the spirit of their two most distinguished citizens, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who wrote the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. These resolutions refer to the federal government, but are just as applicable to state governments in principle. They said, resolved that several states composing the United States of America are not united on the principle of unlimited submission to their general government, and whensoever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its facts are unauthoritative, void, and no of force. Too many Americans view the Second Amendment as granting Americans the right to own firearms, to go hunting, and for self-protection, but the framers of our Constitution had no such intent in mind. James Madison in Phillips Papers 46 wrote that the Constitution preserved the advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation. Where governments are afraid to trust the people with arms, Thomas Jefferson wrote, what the country can preserve is liberty if the rulers are not warned from time to time that the people preserve the spirits of resistance. That's a question mark. Let them take arms. Similar quotations about our founders' desire for Americans to be armed against possible abuses of government can be found at this website, waltwilliams.com/quotations/arms. I will leave that there. And on that website, so you can check it out for yourselves. And one other thing too, I will add the Virginia resolution from the Constitution Center, and you got the summary version. You can read it in its entirety. There's an excerpt. You can read the full document yourself. Here's the thing. Right now, based on these sanctuary places, which you probably still have active, the truth of the matter is, folks, anti-communary doctrine is legit. I'm proud of. Long as the people in that state will do it, the county sheriffs will do it, and the county themselves, give these people the big middle finger. They've done it in Illinois, do it in Virginia once again. Because remember, folks, a little rebellion now and then is good. It doesn't have to always be violence, but with the thrust of knowledge and information. These goofballs in there, these geniuses, I'll call them treasonous quacks, okay? I'll say that with love. Don't know what the hell they're doing. As far as I'm concerned, step down. I just find this pretty damn ludicrous, unacceptable, and they're putting the war on his people. Yes, I dare call it treason. For all you folks that want to defend these hacks that support these bills, prove me wrong if you dare. I would love to hear from you. Well, that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use corn. hit me via email to ll3.podcast@proton.me. If you want to donate, go to PayPal.me or cash.app/Loki Luck number 3. If you want to support Reason, creators, New America Don't Matter, observe responsibly, and share with everyone else. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.